Okay, so happiness.
It's something we all want, right? We chase it, we wish for it, we tie it to these milestones in our lives, Like, oh, when I get that promotion, then I'll be happy. Or when I finally meet the right person, that's when the real happiness kicks in.
Right, like it's this destination.
Exactly. But what if we've got it all backwards?
Mm.
What if happiness isn't the result of success, but the key to unlocking it in the first place? That's what we're diving into today. Shawn Achor's Before Happiness. Have you read this one?
Oh, yeah. Ecker's work is fascinating. And his background as a Harvard researcher, focusing on positive psychology, kind of makes you pay attention to what he's saying,
Right,
right?
absolutely. It's not just some feel-good self-help stuff.
No, not at all.
He's got data to back it up.
He really digs into the science of it.
And one of the things that really struck me was this idea of positive reality. Honestly, when I first heard that, I was like, okay, is this
Yeah,
like a motivational poster?
right.
But it goes so much deeper than that.
It does, because essentially what he's saying is that we don't experience reality objectively. Like
Okay.
we think we do, but our brains are flooded with so much information every second
Oh, I can believe that.
that we can only process a tiny fraction of it.
So our brains are basically playing this constant game of information overload.
Exactly. And they're making choices about what to focus on.
So what we pay attention to, what we even notice in the first place.
Yeah. And here's the thing. Our brains love patterns. So if you're constantly stressed, if you're in that fight or flight mode, your brain is going to start looking for things that confirm that the world is a scary, stressful place.
It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
But that's where this whole positive reality thing comes in. Like,
Yeah.
we actually have more control over this filtering process than we realize.
Yes. We can actually train our brains to focus on the positive, to see the good, even amidst all the chaos. It's like retraining your attention.
It's like putting on a different pair of glasses.
Yes. And Aker calls this tapping into our positive genius.
I like that. Positive genius. So it's not about ignoring problems. It's about choosing where we direct our energy.
Exactly. He uses this example of marathon runners.
Oh, okay.
You know how they hit that wall at mile 20?
Yeah, brutal.
But then they see the finish line and they get this burst of energy.
It's like something kicks in.
Right. They're still in pain, they're still exhausted, but their focus shifts. And they tap into this hidden reserve.
Because they're choosing to see a different part of reality in that moment.
Exactly. Aker calls it the X spot, that point of reference that pulls us forward.
The X spot. I like it. So how do we find our own X spot?
That's the million-dollar question, right?
Right. It's like, okay, that finish line, that's my X spot. Where's that in my daily life? Where's that when I'm staring down a pile of paperwork?
And that's where this idea of multiple realities comes in, right?
Okay, multiple realities, like the multiverse.
Not exactly, though it sounds kind of cool, right?
Yeah.
Aker's point is that there's not just one objective reality, like we usually think. There are actually multiple ways to perceive any situation, and the way we choose to see it, that's what shapes our reality.
So it's not about pretending everything is perfect,
Yeah.
right? Because clearly it's not.
No, not at all. It's more about acknowledging that even within a difficult situation, there might be multiple perspectives, multiple ways to look at it.
Okay, so give me an example.
So, say you get laid off from your job. Awful situation.
Right.
Your first instinct might be panic, fear, totally understandable.
Oh, yeah.
But if you can step back for a second and tap into those multiple realities, you might see it as a chance to finally pursue that passion project you've been putting off.
Okay.
Or maybe it's the push you needed to switch careers or start your own business.
It's about choosing how we view those challenges, right?
Yeah.
Finding that more empowering perspective.
Exactly. It's not easy, but it's a skill you can develop. And Acker argues that stress itself isn't always the enemy.
Oh, interesting. So not about living in a stress-free bubble, because that's just not realistic for most of us.
Right. He says it's actually about how we interpret that stress, like those physical sensations, those thoughts. Do we let them cripple us, or do we find a way to use them as fuel?
Okay, I like that. It's like that saying, you can't control the waves, but you can learn to surf.
Exactly. You still might get knocked down, but you're learning to ride those waves instead of letting them drown you.
So multiple realities, finding those alternative perspectives, how does that actually work in the real world?
Well, next time you're facing a challenge, a stressful situation, try asking yourself this. What's another way to look at this? Like, what's another vantage point I could consider that might change how I feel about this whole thing?
It's so easy to get stuck in our own heads, laser focused on the problem, and we totally forget to look for those alternative solutions.
Right, and our brains can get really good at finding problems. It's like their specialty.
It's true. It's like my brain's default setting is worry. Like, what could possibly go wrong?
But we can train it to do something different. And that's a good segue into this idea of meaningful goals.
Because it's not enough to just reframe our thinking. We have to be moving towards something, right?
Exactly. It's not just about feeling good for the sake of feeling good. It's about taking that positive energy and directing it towards something that truly matters to you.
Okay, so how do we figure out what that something is? What actually matters to us?
Well, Achor asks this really thought-provoking question in his book. How can someone, even when they're facing hardship, believe that happiness is even possible for them?
That's a big question, especially when you're in the thick of it, you know?
Right. And Achor's answer is that it comes down to having this clear set of what he calls meaning markers.
Meaning markers. Okay, break that down for me. What are we talking about here?
So think of your meaning markers as your internal compass, right?
Okay.
Guiding you towards what truly matters. And I'm not just talking about any old goal here.
Not like finally cleaning out my inbox, which, by the way, needs to happen.
We've all been there. But we're talking about those core values, those deep aspirations that make life worth living, the stuff that gets you up in the morning.
So things like spending quality time with loved ones, contributing to your community, finally pursuing that creative passion project.
All of that. It's about identifying those areas in your life, your career, your relationships, your personal growth, your contribution to the world.
So it's not just one thing, right?
Right. And this is where it gets cool. Achor talks about building a diversified meaning portfolio.
Now, wait a minute. A diversified portfolio? For meaning?
Exactly. Think about it like this.
Okay.
With a financial portfolio, you don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, right?
Definitely not. Bad things can happen.
Exactly. So if your entire sense of purpose, your meaning, is riding on one thing, like your job, for example, and something happens there.
You lose your job.
Right. It can be devastating because it's like your entire foundation of meaning just crumbles.
But if you've cultivated meaning in different areas of your life, you have a backup system.
Exactly. That safety net, so to speak. You're more resilient because you're not putting all your meaning eggs in one basket. Makes sense, right?
Totally. I'm already thinking about my own meaning portfolio, and it could use some diversification.
Right. It's a constant work in progress. But it's so worth it because it makes you more resilient, you know?
Yeah.
More able to roll with those inevitable punches.
So we've got our multiple realities. We're building our meaning portfolios. But then there's that age-old question, right? How do we actually achieve those goals? How do we bridge that gap between where we are and where we want to be? Because that's where a lot of us get stuck, right?
Absolutely. And that's where goal perception comes in.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating because it's all about how our brains are wired for motivation.
It really is. It's like we set these big goals and then our brains are like, wait a minute, that requires effort, energy, change. Nope. Let's stick with what's comfortable and familiar.
Exactly. And that's where goal perception can be such a game changer. Because Achor's saying, hey, we can actually hack our brains to make those goals feel more achievable, more rewarding, more, dare I say, exciting.
Okay, a good brain hack. I'm
Right.
always here for that. So how do we do it? How do we actually change how we perceive our goals?
Well, remember those marathon runners? And how their energy shifts when they see the finish line.
Oh yeah, it's like something clicks in their brains when that finish line is within sight.
Right. And Achor's point is that our brains are actually wired to get more motivated the closer we perceive ourselves to be to a goal.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's not enough to just set some vague goal off in the distance. We have to make
Yeah.
it feel real, attainable, almost like it's within reach.
Exactly. Achor breaks this down into 3 key strategies: proximity, target size, and thrust.
Okay, I am intrigued. Proximity, target size, thrust. This is like we're launching a rocket ship to success here. Break it down for me. What do those look like in action?
All right, so let's start with proximity. Instead of focusing on this huge, daunting goal, break it down into smaller milestones.
Okay, so like mini goals along the way.
Exactly. Because celebrating those small wins keeps your motivation high. Your brain's like, yes, we're making progress. Let's keep going.
It's like that saying, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step, right?
Exactly. It's about tricking our brains into enjoying the journey instead of getting overwhelmed by the destination.
Love it. Okay, so that's proximity. What about target size?
So target size is about making the goal itself seem less daunting. This could be anything from focusing on your past successes, reminding yourself of what you're capable of.
It's like, okay, I've tackled tough things before. I've got this.
Right. Or even just visualizing the goal in a way that feels less overwhelming. Instead of seeing it as this tiny bullseye miles away, you're expanding that target, making it feel more attainable.
Okay, so we're getting closer. Our target is bigger. Now bring on the thrust. That sounds powerful.
It is. Thrust is all about reducing the perceived effort it takes to achieve that goal.
Okay, because our brains don't like to work harder than they have to.
Exactly. So this could be anything from breaking down tasks into even smaller chunks to managing your perception of time.
Oh, interesting. Like, how do we make it feel like things aren't taking as long?
It's all about shifting that internal dialogue, right? Instead of, ugh, this is going to take forever, it's, okay, I can totally do this for 25 minutes, then take a break and come back to it.
It's like we're rewiring our brains to find those pockets of motivation wherever we can.
Precisely. And here's the thing. Even with the best intentions, even when we're feeling motivated, we're going to face distractions.
Ugh, tell me about it. The real world doesn't care that we're trying to cultivate happiness and achieve our goals.
Exactly. And Achor calls this noise cancellation.
And we're not just talking about finding a quiet room, right?
Yeah.
Although that does help sometimes.
Sometimes, for sure. But he's talking about something even more important, quieting that inner critic, that voice of doubt that can sabotage our best efforts.
Oh my gosh, yes. That inner voice can be brutal. It's like it's always there waiting to tell me why I can't do something, why I'm not good enough, why I should just give up now.
It's the worst, right? And Achor says there are actually two types of noise, external and internal. External noise is all that stuff bombarding us from the outside.
Okay, so like the constant barrage of notifications, the never-ending news cycle.
Yes. Social media, email, the pressure to be on all the time. It's a lot.
It's like we're living in this age of information overload, and it's exhausting.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then there's the internal noise, right? Those negative thoughts, that self-doubt, the worries that just loop endlessly in our minds.
Oh, I know those loops all too well. And those can feel even more insidious because they're coming from within. Like, my own brain is working against me.
Exactly. So the question is, how do we hit the mute button? How do we deal with all that noise, both internal and external?
Right, because it's not like we can just unplug from the world completely, as tempting as that sounds sometimes.
Definitely not. But we can be more intentional about what we let into our mental space. So for external noise, it's about setting boundaries, creating space for focused work, whether that's setting specific times to check email or putting your phone on Do Not Disturb.
I like that, creating those digital
Yeah.
boundaries
Yeah.
and being mindful of what we're consuming, right? Like maybe stepping away from the 24/7 news cycle or being more selective about what we're scrolling through on social media.
Exactly. Choosing quality over quantity. And when it comes to that internal noise, that's where mindfulness practices can be really helpful. Challenging those negative thought patterns, reframing worries in proportion to their actual likelihood.
It's like, okay, brain, I hear you, but let's look at this realistically. Is this really worth all this mental energy?
Exactly. It's about recognizing when our thoughts are spiraling and making a conscious choice to focus on something more constructive, something that actually moves us forward.
It's like we're taking back control of our mental airwaves.
Yeah.
Creating that inner sanctuary of peace and focus.
Yes. And the coolest thing about creating that inner sanctuary of positivity, it doesn't just stay with you, it has this ripple effect.
Ooh, I like where this is going. So we're not just aiming for individual happiness here. We're talking about impacting the world around us.
Exactly. Achor calls this positive inception.
Okay, I love that idea. Spreading that positive energy like a good virus. So how do we become more intentional about incepting positivity in our interactions?
Well, he talks about franchising success, which I think is a brilliant way to think about it.
Okay, franchising success. So, like, we've found a recipe for positivity that works, and now we're sharing it with others.
Yes. It's about identifying those small, replicable actions or mindsets that breed positivity and then sharing those with others.
So it could be something as simple as a genuine compliment, an act of kindness,
Mhm.
or even just sharing a moment of laughter with someone.
All of those. It doesn't have to be complicated. It's about those small, consistent actions that can create a ripple effect.
I love that. And it's a good reminder that happiness and success aren't just solo pursuits. We're all in this together. Speaking of all in this together, Achor tackles a topic that most people would rather avoid: adversity.
Ah, yes, those inevitable bumps in the road.
But here's the thing. He doesn't just talk about surviving adversity. He actually reframes it as an opportunity for growth and even team building.
Right. Might seem counterintuitive, but Achor's argument is that shared struggles can actually strengthen bonds and build resilience.
Okay, so like going through something tough together actually makes us closer.
Exactly. He gives this example of military cadets going through these grueling challenges. As tough as those experiences are, they create this sense of camaraderie, of shared purpose that transcends the individual experience.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but with this added element of, we're stronger because we went through that together.
Yes, it's powerful stuff. And when
Right.
you come out on the other side of those challenges, you have this shared narrative of resilience that we did it together. Feeling becomes this powerful source of strength and connection.
That's amazing how just a simple shift in perspective can transform something we typically dread, adversity, into this source of growth and connection. We've covered so much ground today, from hacking our brains for positivity to spreading that positive energy to others and even reframing those inevitable challenges as opportunities. This has really got me thinking about how I can apply these ideas in my own life.
Me too. And that's the beauty of Achor's work, right? It's not just theoretical, it's actionable. He gives us these practical tools and strategies that we can use, like today, to cultivate more happiness and success in our lives. And who doesn't want that?
It's true. He really delivers on the title of his book, Before Happiness, reminding us that happiness isn't the reward at the end of a long, hard road, but the fuel that propels us forward, the key to unlocking our full potential. And on that note, a huge thank you to everyone for joining us on this deep dive into Before Happiness. If this conversation resonated with you, we highly recommend checking out Achor's book. Until next time, remember, happiness isn't a destination, it's a choice.
Choose wisely.